the honesty, and the gravity that these men deserve, because they were more than athletes. They were people, and they are gone. Before we begin, I want to say something. This video is different from what we usually do on this channel. There are no hot takes here, no debates, no controversy, just 5 stories about 5 men who left this world too soon. If these stories move you, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, not for the algorithm, just because it means we can keep telling stories that matter. That is all I will ask. Now, let us remember these men the way they deserved to be remembered. We begin with Fred Lane, a running back who came into the NFL as an undrafted free agent out of Lane College in Tennessee in 1997. Nobody expected much from him. Small school, limited exposure, the kind of player who usually spends a year on a practice squad and then disappears. But Fred Lane was different. He made the Carolina Panthers roster, and in 1999, he rushed for over 1,000 yards, finishing with 1,022 yards and 6 touchdowns. He became a legitimate NFL starting running back through nothing but hard work, determination, and refusing to accept the limitations that others placed on him. He was 26 years old. His future looked bright. The Panthers traded him to the Indianapolis Colts in the 2000 offseason, and he was preparing for a fresh start with a new team. On July 6, 2000, Fred Lane was shot and killed at his home in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was murdered by his wife, Deidre Lane. According to court records and trial testimony, the couple had been experiencing marital problems. Deidre Lane shot Fred twice with a shotgun as he entered their home. She was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, and in 2003 she was convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison after pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter. Fred Lane was 26 years old. He had a daughter who was just a toddler at the time of his death. He had clawed his way from an undrafted free agent to a 1,000-yard rusher. He had done everything right on the football field, and none of it could protect him from what happened in his own home. Number 4. Darrent Williams, a cornerback for the Denver Broncos who was selected in the 2nd round of the 2005 NFL Draft out of Oklahoma State. Williams was a rising star. In his 2nd season, 2006, he recorded 3 interceptions and was developing into one of the better young defensive backs in the league. He was 24 years old, quick, athletic, confident, with the kind of swagger that you need to play cornerback at the highest level. He had just finished his 2nd NFL season and had every reason to believe that the best years of his career and his life were still ahead of him. On the night of December 31, 2006, Williams attended a New Year's Eve party at a Denver nightclub called The Shelter. According to police reports and court documents, an altercation occurred inside the club involving members of the Denver Broncos and a group of men affiliated with a local gang. Words were exchanged, tensions escalated, but the situation appeared to calm down, and Williams left the club in the early morning hours of January 1, 2007. He was riding in a limousine with several friends, including Broncos teammate Javon Walker, and as the limousine drove through downtown Denver, a vehicle pulled alongside it and opened fire. Darrent Williams was struck in the neck. Despite being rushed to a hospital, he was pronounced dead. He was 24 years old. The investigation led police to Willie Clark, a member of the Trey Crips gang who had reportedly been involved in the altercation at the nightclub. In 2010, Clark was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Darrent Williams never got to see his 3rd NFL season. He never got to reach his prime. He never got to grow old, because of an argument at a nightclub that should have ended with nothing more than harsh words. His daughter was 2 years old when he died. Steve McNair, and this one cuts deep for anyone who watched football in the late 90s and early 2000s. McNair was one of the toughest quarterbacks who ever played the game. Selected 3rd overall by the Houston Oilers, later the Tennessee Titans, in the 1995 NFL Draft out of Alcorn State, McNair became the face of a franchise that reached the Super Bowl after the 1999 season. He played through injuries that would have sidelined most quarterbacks for weeks. Bruised ribs, turf toe so severe he could barely walk, a fractured sternum, and he just kept playing. In 2003, he won the NFL Co-MVP award alongside Peyton Manning, throwing for over 3,000 yards and 24 touchdowns while leading the Titans to a 12-4 record. He was a three-time Pro Bowler, a warrior, a man that teammates described as the toughest person they had ever been around. McNair retired after the 2007 season with the Baltimore Ravens. He was settling into life after football. He had 4 sons with his wife, Michelle. He was 36 years old. On July 4, 2009, Steve McNair was found dead inside a Nashville condominium. He had been shot multiple times. Beside him was the body of 20-year-old Sahel Kazemi, who had shot McNair before turning the gun on herself. The investigation revealed that McNair and Kazemi had been involved in a romantic relationship outside of his marriage. Kazemi was reportedly distraught over financial troubles and what she believed was McNair's intention to end the relationship. She purchased a gun days before the murder-suicide. Steve McNair was 36 years old. He left behind a wife, 4 sons, and a football legacy that should have been followed by decades of life as a father, a mentor, and a man who had given everything to the game. Instead, his life ended in a condominium, in circumstances that brought pain not just to his family, but to everyone who had admired him. His funeral was attended by thousands. His jersey hangs in the Tennessee Titans' Ring of Honor. But nothing can replace what was lost. Number 2. Will Smith. A defensive end for the New Orleans Saints who was not just a great player, he was a champion. Smith was selected in the first round of the 2004 NFL Draft out of Ohio State, where he had been a consensus All-American. He joined a Saints franchise that was struggling but on the verge of something special. And in 2009, Will Smith was a starting defensive end on the New Orleans Saints team that won Super Bowl 44, defeating the Indianapolis Colts and bringing a championship to a city that was still recovering from the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. That Super Bowl victory was not just a football moment, it was a healing moment for an entire region, and Will Smith was part of it. He spent his entire career with the Saints, recording 67.5 sacks over 10 seasons. He was a team captain, a leader, a man who represented everything that organization wanted to be. He retired after the 2013 season. He was living in New Orleans with his wife, Raquel, and their 3 children. He was 34 years old. On the night of April 9, 2016, Will Smith was driving in New Orleans' Lower Garden District after attending the French Quarter Festival. His car was rear-ended by another vehicle driven by Cardell Hayes. According to witness accounts and court testimony, Smith exited his vehicle after the collision and an argument ensued. Hayes, who was legally carrying a firearm, shot Smith multiple times, killing him. Raquel Smith was also shot but survived her injuries. Cardell Hayes claimed self-defense, stating that Smith had brandished a weapon during the confrontation. A gun was recovered from Smith's vehicle, but prosecutors argued that Smith never pointed it at Hayes and that Hayes was the aggressor. In December 2016, Hayes was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 25 years in prison. In 2023, the Louisiana Supreme Court ordered a new trial due to a ruling related to non-unanimous jury verdicts. The legal proceedings have continued, but none of it changes what happened on that street in New Orleans. Will Smith, a Super Bowl champion, a father of 3, a man beloved by an entire city, was killed over a traffic accident. His daughter was 11 years old at the time. His sons were 8 and 1. A fender bender. That is what started the sequence of events that ended with Will Smith dead on a New Orleans street. The randomness of it, the preventability of it, that is what makes this one so difficult to process.
And if you were a football fan over the age of 25, you already know why this one hurts the most. Not because the other deaths on this list are any less tragic, but because Sean Taylor was 24 years old. Because he had not yet reached his prime, because the football world was still waiting to see what he would become, and because we never got to find out. Taylor was selected 5th overall by Washington in the 2004 NFL Draft out of the University of Miami, where he had been a consensus All-American safety. From the moment he stepped onto an NFL field, he was different. 6'2", 212 pounds, a 4.35 40-yard dash. He hit like a linebacker and covered like a cornerback. And the violence with which he played was not reckless, it was calculated. Every collision was intentional. Every tackle was a statement. His hit on punter Brian Moorman during the 2007 Pro Bowl, a meaningless all-star game where nobody is supposed to actually try, became an instant classic. Because Sean Taylor did not have a setting below maximum. He was selected to the Pro Bowl in 2006 and 2007. He recorded 8 interceptions in the 2006 and 2007 seasons combined. Defensive coordinators were designing schemes specifically to account for his presence. He was becoming the best safety in football. And then, on November 17, 2007, during a game against the Philadelphia Eagles, Taylor left the field in the first quarter with what was initially reported as a knee injury. He returned home to Miami to rest and recover. His knee was bothering him, but he was expected to return soon. On November 26, 2007, at approximately 1:30 in the morning, intruders broke into Taylor's home in Palmetto Bay, Florida. Taylor was in the bedroom with his girlfriend, Jackie Garcia, and their 18-month-old daughter, also named Jackie. Taylor grabbed a machete he kept beside his bed and confronted the intruders. One of them, a 17-year-old named Eric Rivera Jr., fired a single shot that struck Taylor in the upper leg, severing his femoral artery. Sean Taylor died the following day at Jackson Memorial Hospital. He was 24 years old. The investigation revealed that the break-in was not random. Rivera and his accomplices had targeted Taylor's home, believing he would not be there. One of the accomplices had previously worked for Taylor's family and knew the layout of the house. They were looking for cash and valuables. Instead, they found Sean Taylor, who confronted them to protect his girlfriend and daughter. In 2013, Eric Rivera Jr. was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 57.5 years in prison. 3 other men were convicted of related charges and received significant prison sentences as well. Sean Taylor was laid to rest on December 3, 2007. Over 2,000 people attended his funeral. His jersey number, 21, was retired by Washington. A memorial stands outside the team's facility, but none of that brings him back. None of that tells us what Sean Taylor would have become if he had lived. Hall of Famer. That is what most people believe. One of the greatest safeties in NFL history. That is what the trajectory suggested. But we will never know, because a group of young men decided to break into his house for cash, and a 24-year-old father died protecting his family. Every November, Washington honors Sean Taylor's memory. Fans still wear his jersey. His highlights still circulate on social media, showing a level of athleticism and violence that the modern NFL rarely produces. And every time those highlights play, the same thought enters the mind of anyone watching. What if? What if he had lived? What would he have become? We will never know. And that is the cruelest part of all. 5 men, 5 lives, 5 futures that will never exist. Fred Lane was 26, Darrent Williams was 24, Steve McNair was 36, Will Smith was 34, Sean Taylor was 24. They were fathers, they were husbands, they were sons and brothers and teammates and friends.